Okay. Everyone see the screen? I'm going to start up with a PowerPoint. Before I get going though, I'm going to go through a number of slides and talk a bit. We'll have time at the end for questions and observations. So if you could just hold that till I get through everything, because there's a lot of ground to cover here. So let's get going. Okay, we're going to talk about effective time management and daily planning. And really it comes down to, if you want to be effective in what you do, you have to do the right things. Enough of the right things to progress yourself towards where you want to head. Okay, I'm a representative for Leadership Management International, and we're going to talk about some key concepts to help you in your daily planning and time management. Okay, our founder, Paul J. Meyer, he's considered the pioneer of the self-improvement industry. He came before people like Zig Ziglar, Stephen Covey, Dale Carnegie, and a number of others. And his definition of success, let's talk about that for a moment. It's interesting. It's the progressive realization of worthwhile, predetermined personal goals. There's a lot to think about in those words, but they're specifically chosen and very powerful when put together. But it's a journey. It's about a progressive realization of worthwhile. They need to be something that are worthwhile to you as an individual, that are predetermined, crystallized thinking of where you want to go, and they're personal. The goals need to be personal to you. All right, your life's journey towards success. You're going to go from current to future, and you might think it looks something like this, but in reality, it's not. It's a bunch of curves and ups and downs and setbacks and learnings as you go, and it's a series of goals. Really, when you break it down, it's a series of goals to get from where you are and where your life mission is, what it is that you want to accomplish. All right, so let's talk about choosing the right goals. Really, you need to determine your life mission and purpose. And if you've never done this exercise to write it out, a paragraph, write out what is your life mission from a personal and business perspective. The goals need to support this mission and purpose and the long-term strategic direction that you're going to take. And the goal should be based on the benefits to be achieved or the losses to be avoided. A lot of people set goals, really, when you think about it, losses to be avoided. So for example, if let's say you're gearing to retirement, you don't want to be left without enough money when you retire. So you set a financial goal of wherever you want to go, and that can be a driving factor behind any goals that you set for your business. Okay, so moving ahead, the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. And simply stated, this implies that the majority of applications, a small number of cases, is responsible for a larger percentage of effect. Okay, so the blue, 20% of what you do results in about 80% of the outcome. And it's a proven principle time and time again. And viewed from a personal productivity perspective, really comes down to roughly 80% of your time is usually spent on trivial or non-productive activities. Therefore, we need to shift our focus on the 20% of productive activities, and we need to put enough time into those areas that get results. So we're going to talk about a time matrix on the y-axis, important and not important, and then the x-axis, urgent and not urgent. And really, there's 4 quadrants: quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. The first one, urgent and important. These are imperative, must-happen items. It's a crisis situation, happens unexpectedly. You don't plan for these types of things. They happen sometimes without any warning. It's firefighting. It's stress, and you can't plan it in most cases. Now, the not urgent but important, this is the most important quadrant. It's planning. It's preventing poor performance. It's being out ahead of the curve and avoiding situations that end up in quadrant 1. I'm going to refer to high payoff activities, getting back to the 20% effort equals 80% results. These high payoff activities are things like planning, coaching, aligning, development, the actions that help you achieve where you want to get to. It's strategic, can be administrative, emails, phone calls, etc. And you want to say yes to SMART goals, the goals that you set to achieve what it is you want in your life. It's prevention, preparation, measure being, keeping track of your score and tracking your progress so you know where you are, very important. Okay, let's talk about urgent but not important. Some meetings. I mean, meetings can be a complete waste of time. Expectations of others. It's the low payoff activities, the 80% of what you do that may only result in 20% of the outcome. This is an area where you need to simplify, eliminate, and delegate to get out of this quadrant. And then you get to quadrant 4, not important, not urgent. And this is no goals, apathy, low motivation. It's fun, goofing off TV. You need to be in here to de-stress, but it's certainly something that you want to avoid. The first quadrant 1, is reactive. The next one I'll call deception, because what happens is a lot of people come in and they're so caught up in the urgency of every day. There's a blur between what's really important and what's not important. It becomes obscured, it becomes gray, and you fall into the trap of spending so much time on urgent items that aren't important. So the fourth one, quadrant 4, is absolutely irresponsible from a business perspective. So really, quadrant 2, not important but important. You need to spend as much time in this area as possible. This is where you need to be proactive. You want to avoid being irresponsible, quadrant 4. Controversially, I'm going to say you want to avoid being in urgent and important as much as you can. And this is by proper planning and avoidance. Say no to the quadrant 3, because this is the area of deception, and say yes to quadrant 2, not urgent, but important, most important use of your time. All right, so let's keep moving on. Effective time management. What are your high payoff activities? Okay, you need to spend time reflecting on this. So the next minute, I just want you to take a minute, jot down on a piece of paper, what are the high payoff activities that will drive success in your business? Let's just focus it on the business side. Just take some time to jot them down. Think hard. And when we're off the call, you'll have more time to put some brain power into this. But write down what comes to mind. Often your gut instinct, your first few thoughts are the most important things. You know what they are. Okay, I'm going to move ahead. Prioritization. When push comes to shove and things happen and you're getting hit from all directions, do you have a predetermined way of sifting through what's important and what's a priority versus something else that's lesser of a priority? Important for you to really have a structured approach to handling those high stress situations as they come up. What's the most important thing to act on any particular situation? All right, to-do list, let's talk about that. Traditional to-do list is a very ineffective productivity tool. There's a tendency to do the easy tasks to show progress. They get long, they're depressing to look at. They lack prioritization. Getting back to quadrant 2, spending time on high payoff activities is very important. To-do lists don't do that for you. And sometimes they get lost. You misplace them. Dealing with social media, emails, and texting, just a few things. Avoid multitasking. It's very unproductive. Scientific studies in the University of California showed that anytime you step from one aspect and jump into another requirement, and then jump back to the original one, you lose 2.5 minutes trying to sort through in your mind where you left off. So avoid multitasking. Anyone that tells you that they're good at multitasking, no, I'll challenge them to that. Group similar tasks in groupings at certain times of the day and plan your day. An example, emails. Deal with them twice a day. You don't have to jump on every email that comes in. Turn off email notifications, the ones that show up on the screen or beep at you. It's just, it's a distractor. Turn off cell phone notification sounds. All right. Unless you're in an industry where everything is time sensitive to the second, I would not I would not recommend having sounds and notifications coming up on cell phones. Determine a reasonable response time for text. Example, respond within 2 hours. If you think you need to respond right away for every text that comes through, maybe you need to rethink that. And then deal with personal social media responses at lunch or break times. All right, daily planning. Start the day with some quality quiet time. Very important before you start the day. And then write down what I'm going to call the imperative items, things that must be done that day to advance your goals. And the 80-20 rule of getting priorities completed, the high payoff activities. The important items, you can write them down too. Things that maybe you don't get to that day, you can transfer them to the next day's activity list, but certainly writing down what you need to do every day is very important for your productivity. And then paperwork's best. I mean, you could use spreadsheets, you can put it digital. The problem is it's not there in your face. You forget that you have it and it's not evident. Whereas paper is in front of you. And it takes more thought to take mind to pen to hand to paper than it does to type on a keyboard, more thought. And reserve times in your calendar to get these completed. Now, can't stress this enough. It's one thing to write them down, but to put them into your calendar and actually act on them is equally important. And then check off items as you go through the day to make yourself, give yourself a pat on the back, be happy with getting through the day and becoming more productive. Okay, let's get back to the definition of success. It's the progressive realization of worthwhile predetermined personal goals. And there's a lot to that. So a little bit of homework for you. Write out your mission statement for your life, include both professional and personal aspects, write it out, rewrite it, hone it a bit until you're happy with what you have. And then make a list of the high payoff activities that produce results. What are they? What are the things that you need to work on every day? And then third, start daily planning to include these high payoff activities for each and every day. And if you do that, if you haven't been doing that, and if maybe you got off track, but by doing these 3 items, you will have taken a huge step towards becoming more productive in both your personal and business lives. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll open it up for questions, discussion, any observations from the group. Actually, I'll put this slide back up. You can unmute yourself, and what I'll do is it okay for me to stop sharing now? Okay. So what are your thoughts?
Malcolm, are you going to hand out that the PowerPoint that you just went through? I find it really good. There's some really good nuggets in that, and especially that graphic when you pulled away from being in the I can't remember which quadrant it was, but I understand the quadrants.
Yeah,
Right.
I like that too, actually.
Yeah, definitely. I will I'll talk to Jennifer about that, and certainly we'll have the recording.
Boy, Malcolm, do I need you?
We can talk. I'll help.
Hey Malcolm, it's Carmine here. That quadrant, I've seen it before. I've heard it being called the Eisenhower matrix.
Oh, yeah.
But Darren Hardy actually spoke with somebody that was very successful. I think he was a billionaire or something like that, and he taught Darren this matrix as well. But he called it the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And the 4th quadrant was called the Devil's Vortex. So that was a pretty interesting one that that I've heard of. But yeah, excellent. Right on point with everything you said.
And Stephen Covey, First Things First, and other books that he wrote, similar thing. Various like variations of the same theme, but it's so important, this 80-20 rule.
It was Eisenhower, though, that came up with the not important and urgent.
Yeah.
He's the father of this philosophy.
A great reminder, Malcolm, of how we can get distracted unconsciously by those things that are just sucking up our time and taking our time, and a great reminder. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, in the short 10 minutes that I had, I tried to get the big nuggets, but there's this whole fallacy of multitasking and, you know, other aspects of what I went through that people need to really rethink how they do things. And social media is such a distraction. It's a killer, time killer.
Yeah, and so I just want to ask a question, because as a business owner, I do believe in planning. And then, you know, as Jordan Lennon said, you know, life happens, right? And so how do you, like, the unknown, the opportunities that come up, and maybe these can be referred to as bright, shiny objects from entrepreneurs. How do you, with a plan, and somebody says, okay, I need something urgently, how do you then, you know, make a decision to not act on that, or things that are outside of your control? And how do you, because it's a balancing act. And I know it's maybe a big question to answer in a small period of time, but how do you weigh against the unknown with the planning?
I suppose the way I would, from my perspective, those big, bright, shining objects that appear, they're just distractions mostly. And, you know, if you have a framework for prioritization, a framework for keeping on track with your long-term planning, a bright, shining object could actually be a great opportunity that you need to jump on right away. But in many cases, well, why not push it out a week? Do you have to jump on it right away? I mean, it's that sense of priority that you just need to keep the discipline in your daily planning, and not feel that you have to jump on something.
Malcolm, do you do accountability as well with your clients
Yes,
when they
absolutely.
get into this? Great. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone
Malcolm,
else?
I think, sorry, I was on mute, Malcolm. One of the things that really, I think really puts it all together is something called single handling. And you kind of touched on it, saying that it's not possible to multitask. The other thing is that as entrepreneurs, we have so many things going on and so many things coming to us. I think one of the biggest things that I've been able to learn is that when you're at that important and not urgent task, that you continue to do that task and nothing else until it's done. Don't let distractions come in, because of the point that you made, a good point. When you're distracted, it takes a couple minutes to come back and then get focused back in there. I mean, obviously things can come up, emergencies, but if you've got an important task that needs to be done and that's your number one task, you do nothing else until that one's done. Nothing.
Yeah.
Go to the washroom on a break, yeah,
Oh,
but no other tasks until that's done.
Right. And to that point, there's two different types of procrastination. Number one is not starting, and number two is not completing. When you really think about it, people who procrastinate, don't get things done, it's one of those two. They don't start it or they don't complete it. How many people do you know that started something? It's great. They don't complete what they started. Highly unproductive. Good point. Okay. I know we're at the end of the session. Thanks very much, everybody. And I hope I've helped in some way, and I'll make sure that the recording gets back to Jennifer for everyone to take a look at.
Thanks,
So
Malcolm. It was
very
really
much.
good.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Much.
Thanks, Malcolm.
All right.
Thank you.
And so we are done. Another day. If we can get this recording to stop, that would be great. Oh, I can't do it. Can I do it?